Okay, hello everybody. Are you all comfortable? Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's People Scrutiny meeting, which has been called to debate a decision that's been taken but not yet been implemented regarding the Tudor Day Centre. I'd especially like to thank the public for attending today. It may be that the Scrutiny Committee cannot change this decision, but it is our role to scrutinise it fully and to offer the committee's view. So we'll now take apologies for absence and declarations of interest before beginning the public open forum. Apologies. Hazel, do we have any?
We have apologies from Councillor Stevens, Chair, and she's been substituted by Councillor Eason, but also apologies from Councillor Edwards, who's being substituted by Councillor Rachel Buckler.
Thank you. And declarations of interest, do we have any? None. Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay. Public. Oh.
I believe that Rachel Buckner is here as a member of the committee, and Jane Lucas is substituting for Christopher Edwards. I think that was the way it was.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That's okay. Thank you. Okay. So the committee is keen to hear from the public, and particularly those who use the services provided at Tudor Day Centre. The committee has been sent several contributions in advance of the meeting, which includes a video from Denise Quarrington, a submission titled The Gathering Pitch from Owen Lewis, and also accounts from Sarah Griffiths, Hugh Candler, and Karen Webb. So we thank you for those submissions which we have seen and read. Today we have 12 people who have requested to speak at our meeting under the public open forum. So please can I ask that each person speaks for up to 3 minutes so that we can hear from everyone. So if I could ask first, could David Abbott raise his hand?
I believe, Chair, David has told us that he isn't able to make today's meeting now.
We've got a letter, so Tori's going to read it out.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I should have explained how to use the mic. If you press the button, it'll go green, and then, yeah, that's great.
Brilliant. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so this is a letter from Professor David Abbott, who is a professor of social care at the University of Bristol.
Could I ask your name first? Sorry.
My name's George Harold Millman. I'm Owen's partner, and I've been involved in the campaign.
Thank you.
Professor Abbott writes, Dear Scrutiny Committee, I'm writing to express concern about the decision and the decision-making process to close Tudor Street Day Centre in Abergavenny, and would make the following points. The decision comes ahead of an overall review of services, basically on the grounds of cost savings, a fact which is not contested. It is worth reflecting on the message that this sends to people who have or might use the service. I've not seen a copy of the letter sent to families about the decision, a decision made without any consultation, but I do question whether it was written within the spirit of the 2010 Equality Act in an accessible and easy-read version. I understand that the letter may have needed to be adapted to different users and audiences. Nothing in the proposal or in any subsequent comms from you suggests what might come or even have been planned or envisaged in place of what is being taken away. This seems to me to be a significant oversight. There is a suggestion made by Councillor Tudor Thomas that learning disabled people will be able to pay PAs and carers instead. 2 things to say about this. 1, direct payments and personal budgets were designed to be a choice for learning disabled people, not a replacement for services. 2, people with quite low levels of support need who may benefit from a place to be and meet may well not be eligible for direct payments or personal budgets. Whilst some people may well enjoy and choose more personalised ways of getting support, we know that this may not alleviate and may exacerbate loneliness and isolation if other so-called mainstream offerings are not welcoming, inclusive and accessible. Personalisation may be one way of supporting a so-called good life, but only if it takes account of the real-life ways in which people build community and relationships, as pointed out in Critical Social Policy, a 2022 empirical study of personalisation in the lives of people with learning disabilities, in which the authors write, "We propose that the personalisation agenda as it currently stands, as an individualising movement involving an increasing responsibilisation of individuals and their families, ignores the inherently relational nature of care and support." A recent study in which I was one of the research team found that people with a learning disability in Wales and their families and supporters experienced a multitude of negative effects during the COVID pandemic. While the general population experienced lockdowns and isolation, the final report of the Welsh COVID study has found that the effects on people with a learning disability have been significantly more profound. These negative effects have included reduced services and support, including many people denied an annual health, which has in turn added more pressure onto family carers, increased anxiety and loneliness, and a severe reduction in social activities and relationships. In a recent paper about day centre provision for older people, researchers found that the presumption to close services deemed to be unfashionable risked increasing loneliness and overlooked the importance of group identity and togetherness. Nobody wants to defend outdated and poor quality day centre provision for learning disabled people or for anyone else. If numbers attending were dwindling, it would seem important to have asked people why and how what was on offer could be improved. Options might include some seed corn funding for a self-advocacy People First organisation who could be involved in shaping and designing the offer or service. If I could make some final comments, they would be, I do not say that academics are your first port of call, and certainly not before foregrounding the views of learning disabled people, their families, carers and supporters. That said, there is local policy and evidence-informed expertise in South Wales, including but not limited to Steve Baer at Cardiff University and Professor Ruth Norway and her team. I understand the need for affordable housing, but would point out an irony that this part of the housing market is not easily accessible to learning disabled people with low levels of support. With low levels of support needs, as evidenced by ongoing research that I lead with colleagues at the University of York. The benefits to them of the closure of the centre in the absence of anything new or else seem non-existent. I think the timeline for revisiting this decision has been difficult and fallen over the Christmas period, which seems not to be in a very consultative spirit. I've written this letter in haste. I also think that the initial decision-maker, Councillor Tudor Thomas, failed to engage with reasonable online dialogue about the decision, which again works against a sense of open and transparent dialogue about this issue. I write as a concerned Abergavenny resident, but informed by my work as a professor in social policy at the University of Bristol and a member of the Nora Fry Centre for Disability Studies and as an associate director of the National Institute for Health and Care Research, NIHR, School for Social Care Research. Yours sincerely, Professor David Abbott. And I'd just like to add that it was quite difficult to get that letter into this meeting because the process is such that people were barred from registering themselves quite quickly into the process. There are a lot of people that would have liked to speak and just didn't get the chance to. We got it in the end simply because I myself forewent what I was going to say in favour of reading that letter because it was far better.
Thank you, George. Thank you for that. Do we have Mark Warrington in the room? No?
No, his father died through different
Okay.
so he's in Kent looking after his
Thank you for that. Sarah Griffiths, would you like to speak next? Could somebody... Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Right, I'm speaking on behalf of people who are disabled or who have mobility issues, mentally or physically, or who have profound disabilities, who used to attend the day centre, and it was central for people to access. Now people I know are roaming the town centre with their support workers in cold conditions, and they haven't got anywhere to go. The only place they have got is Mardy Park, but as I said to the reporter, that's the other side of Abergavenny. That's really going out to town. The place I am talking about is Mardy Park, and it's like growing spaces as well. Mardy Park is okay, but what I think of is my day centre, or my day, my life, everyone was under one roof, and you could have a hot meal, and there was activities for people to do, like a range of activities, whereas Mardy Park has only got art and garden, which is not really enough activities. I am lucky in a way, but that I do volunteering work. But personally, that's why I'm here. I am speaking on behalf of people who haven't got the confidence to speak up for themselves, or who are less fortunate than me. I speak to anyone that I do. I'm just like my mum. My mum brought me up to fight for what I believe in, and this is the fight for the centre to stay open. It does get lonely for me, I will admit. And I don't see many of my friends like I used to. It's only like if I go to town, or if I go on a Magmins trip, or Mardy Park, that I really see them. But I did go to the day centre for quite a few years, and I really miss being under one roof and seeing all my friends. And I would like to see them, especially with all this cold weather. There's another piece I wrote. This centre, Tooth Street, needs to be open. Many people are lost without it. I see people walking in the streets with their trolleys. It must be hard for them. I'm not mentioning names, but there's one person that I'm really concerned about. And he lives, I see him quite often, and I talk to him quite often. But it goes around as if he's living rough. So it's not just me, there's other people that's concerned about him. And I just feel sorry for the likes of people like him that haven't got anywhere decent to go. It goes like to train to post or Park Street to travel hot meal. But with my day, my life, they had activities that was based on for people on all occasions, like bingo, pottery, arts and crafts. It was all those activities what people wanted, and they did cookery sessions as well. The point I'm making is my day should be supporting the users, not abandoning them in the community in all weathers, because it's not right. My Day, My Life is a social services centre, and they should be all under one roof, and it should be supported. Mardy Park is a resource centre. It's not actually supporting people with like profound disabilities. It's for people that's older than us, that got dementia, etc. Another example, I know someone who goes to town every day, but when she has support of someone, she was happy and allowing. I see the difference in her. It's getting people motivated. I might not say a lot, but I think a lot. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. It's nice to see you. Okay. Owen Lewis. Could Owen Lewis raise his hand? Would you like to speak next to him, Owen?
Yeah. Okay. My name is Owen, and until 2017, I was a support worker at My Day, My Life. I am here today to express why I think the property report is incorrect. At the start of the My Day, My Life scheme, I was involved in working with individuals to put together person-centred plans. They decided what they would like to do within their day. This included activities that were in or out of the Tudor Street Centre. It's important to know that having a centre and being out in the community are both vital when it comes to giving opportunities to vulnerable adults, especially if you are saying you want to give individuals choice that meets their personality and needs. For example, I worked closely with someone in the My Day, My Life scheme who wanted to use the centre to draw and frame his art and make calendars from his artwork. He also asked to showcase them in the community and to sell to customers. We achieved this by taking him to Tinton to the Signal Box exhibition. Since Tudor Street closed, this person hasn't been able to do anything like this anymore. A few other people I supported at My Day, My Life raised an interest in being radio presenters, and we were able to achieve this in partnership with Able Radio. I have spoken to someone at Able Radio who wondered why the individuals who used to go no longer do so. He was keen to start the partnership again and include training and qualifications. Since the building is closed, the people involved in the My Day, My Life scheme have to walk around town and hang out in cafes. They don't get to go and meet their friends and do the activities they used to have, which included music workshops, sensory groups, art groups, IT tasks, and lots more. There used to be a cafe in Tudor Street that a lot of the individuals worked at. This shows that Tudor Street Centre is a good community base in itself. There is no point looking at other locations when this is the best one available. It has great disability access and toilets. It's easy for people to get to and from. It would cost money to create more disability access elsewhere. My Mates is another scheme that Monmouthshire brought in a few years ago, which reduced My Day, My Life activities that have now come to an end. Those needing one-to-one support cannot easily access most of the My Mates group activities, which tend to just include trips to pop concerts or restaurants, which are also too expensive for most people to attend, particularly on a regular basis. Their events are mainly in the evening, and most people need things to do in the day. I did express my concerns at the time, but I left shortly after that point, and from interactions I've had with those still involved, nothing has seemed to improve. Since COVID, people have been more isolated I think reopening Tudor Street would have helped individuals integrate into the community and also help support the wider community. A family carer has told me that she has only recently been contacted by a social worker and had no contact at all since before COVID until now, and this was after the decision to close had been made. I've also noticed that the report does not mention people with mental health problems, only learning difficulties. I want to ask why. People with mental health issues also use that service, so why are they not being acknowledged in the report? For this group, it was particularly important to avoid isolation and build confidence. The report states disadvantages to the service users and advantages to the council, particularly the housing department, and the alternative service offered seems to have been based on assumptions rather than consultation. It also seems to be based on trying to act before a law comes in that might restrict the opportunity to develop the land based on environmental concerns regarding floodplains. This does not seem to be in line with the philosophy of the Future Generations Act, nor does it seem to fit with the aim of the Act to ensure people are involved in decision-making as equal partners. Therefore, I am asking for this decision to be overturned and reconsidered. I am aware that my proposal for a new scheme at Tudor Street has been sent around to the Council as part of the review. I am happy to discuss this further if you would like to arrange to speak to me again. Lastly, I would just want to say that we put together a petition online and a physical copy recently to save Tudor Street Centre, and between them we've currently had over 1,000 signatures to save the day centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Sarah Chicken, could you raise your... Thank you, Sarah. Would you like to speak next?
Good morning. Morning.
That's
Can
fine.
you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Sarah Chicken, and I'm here today to represent my daughter, Emily Chicken, who is in the small group of people with our community of Monmouthshire suffering with profound and complex medical needs. Emily was diagnosed with Rett syndrome at an early age, a neurological condition that severely affects her physical and mental state, needing 24/7 care for the duration of her life. Emily has profound challenges. No speech, is severely restricted, and as she's got older, her physical movements have been tarred by, she's not able to do anything for herself. My husband and I have battled through our daughter's life to obtain the best outcomes for her health and well-being. We have enriched her life, but have made many sacrifices to ours. We have struggled and have faced many life-changing challenges along the way. Having lived in Monmouthshire all our lives, a very affluent area, you would think, or you would like to think, that we have all the facilities, but it's far from it. We haven't. We have no daycare provision, no safe, warm place, no changing facilities, no respite. So for everything that we have done for Emily, it has all been out of county. So Emily, she goes to respite in Ebervale. Day centre, we did go to Tudor Street Day Centre, but she needed hydrotherapy. So we then went to Burt Dennin in Bramau, and recently Ambito in Cwmbran, where under one roof they have everything. Individuals with very complex needs are extremely vulnerable. They need a different type of care. Carers who are trained to nursing standards, they have feeding tubes, they may suffer epilepsy, episodes of agitation. They need a spacious, purpose-built building that can accommodate tracking hoists, changing beds, toilet facilities. All these we do not have in Abergavenny. We need a warm, friendly atmosphere with sensory room, a quiet space for the individuals. They may be feeling tired, they may have an off day, or they just may prefer to rest with healing music. They can't do this in cafes and other places where we are thought to go. Would you consider a purpose-built hub? Changing the use of the building will and has affected these individuals, their parents, carers, and their families. When COVID hit us and the pandemic changed a way of life that they were so used to, we cared for our daughter through unprecedented times, alone. We did not have any support for over 2 years. We did not have any phone calls or anyone from our social background and our coordinators, because Emily is funded by continuing healthcare. Can you tell us today what range of community-based opportunities are available in Monmouthshire, mainly Abergavenny, because we have searched and cannot find anything adequate? Transition. What is there for young people leaving special education to come into the adult world? I know that we found transition very hard, and that is when I helped to set up a group called Magic. Around 2014, when Emily was going through the transition, it was so unsettling for us. Monmouthshire brought in a gentleman called Bob Rhodes. He did some consultancy work for MCC, and this is when life as Tudor Day Centre changed. Okay. My Day, My Life was then created. And I always say, for this small minority of complex needs, it was not for the better. Bob Rhodes created a different way of life for people with learning disabilities, living and choosing activities in the community, moving on from what he said was an institutional way of life. To sustain activities, you have to have a firm plan in place, buildings that are accessible, toilet facilities. This is when care was broken, especially for the more complex, severely disabled group, and they deserve better. Councillor Thomas, you are our Cabinet Member for Social Care. Care in this community has now broken down. What are you going to do about it?
Thank you, Sarah. Would you mind if we wait for everybody to speak before Councillor Griffiths has a chance to speak to you? Councillor Thomas. Mavis Griffiths. Do we have Mavis Griffiths? No? Okay, thank you. Ange Trett?
Yeah.
Good morning. It's Angela Trett. I'm here to represent health and social care staff, really. I used to work at Tudor Day Centre many years ago with my husband, and I was also a carer for somebody with MS and attended the centre. I believe that daycare is the most important way of care for the community. I've listened to all the points that people have made out today and written some down. Cost effectively, to have the one-to-one care with the range of needs that people have is far more expensive when you come to the training, the care turnover. Having it under one roof is definitely more cost effective. Also, for the Tudor Day Centre building itself has many opportunities for different types of care that people are talking about today. I've read Councillor Thomas's budget for 2023 and 2022, which also includes homelessness, which hasn't been mentioned. I believe that the day centre has the opportunity to open up again for different types of care, not just for learning disabilities, but for people to go where they have nowhere to go, and for carers to be able to be fully trained for these needs. We have a massive shortage of carers in the community. We just can't find them. What happens when people go off sick? Who's going to step in for these people if they're not under one roof? What happens if they're out in the community and they need first aid or a defibrillator and the carers aren't trained for that? What happens for insurance if anything goes wrong and you've got a one-to-one care basis? It's not a viable option. These people as well, the people that look after their families, their loved ones that they work for, they need respite care. 24-hour care is the most difficult job for anybody. I've done it for over 30 years. I've worked in all types of care. I've worked on MS 24/7 care in Abergavenny, and it's not easy to run a team or get carers that are trained to the ability that we need. The day centre was the flagship of Monmouthshire County Council and care in Abergavenny, and it's a very sad situation to see it go how it is. It used to be self-funded as well, with an annual turnover of 33,000 a year, that the carers and the users used to bring in themselves. I don't see why that can't happen again. That would be a question that I'd like to know, and many people don't know, although it is public knowledge, people don't look into that. We used to hold all sorts of charity days, fates. Yeah, where did that 33,000 go that was in the bank 20 years ago? Because it didn't go back into the day centre. And that was raised by the people that worked there and the people that attended it. If it's going to be used for social housing and sold off, how many people, how many residents will it benefit from knocking down that one building, to how many people would use the service again as a day centre? There's a lot more that I could say, but we've only got 3 minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. Do we have Karen Webb here? Hi, Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm here representing my son, Alex. My Day, My Life offered a safe, warm and dry environment for my son, Alex, to take part in stimulating activities such as drumming and cooking, also socialising with his friends. And it wasn't just for him, but all the vulnerable people and adults with disabilities in Abergavenny. Some just needing a place to go when feeling lonely, or might like to ask for a bit of advice. Alex attended My Day in the holidays when he was in college, and the plan was, when he finished college in 2020, he would access the hub full-time. But then obviously COVID happened and the hub closed and never reopened. The hub has disabled access, and more importantly for my son, personal changing facilities, including a changing bed. Abergavenny has no other facilities such as this, so his support workers have to take him into supermarket toilets to change him standing up the best way they can. For him, there is no dignity, and his support workers, this makes it very difficult for them. While it is great to get him out into the community when it is dry, there needs to be something for him to do and somewhere for him to go in that community, which will benefit him. It is not easy to find somewhere to go when the weather is bad, and difficult for the support workers to make those decisions. Adults with disabilities and vulnerable people of Abergavenny deserve a hub they can access to feel safe and listened to, and to take part in stimulating activities and learn life skills, and to have adequate facilities. It is not appropriate to have vulnerable people walking around the town all day using supermarkets for socialising in. If the hub in Tudor Street is not going to reopen, a suitable alternative needs to be found now, which must have all the facilities that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Chris Edmondson. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Chris Edmondson. I'm a former chair of Mellon Homes, and as you might imagine, I'm passionate about the need for everyone to have a good, safe home. However, I'm now a full-time carer for my husband, who has a traumatic brain injury received in an accident 6 years ago. He does not attend the Tudor Street Centre, but we've both been to events there and talked to the staff and many of the people who use the centre. We went to a brilliant quiz. It was a fundraiser. There were loads of people there. It was terrific. I know how much the centre's been missed during the 2 years of closure, both by centre users and staff, and also by the families who look after the people who use the centre. Caring is really hard work. I know this from personal experience, and my husband has far fewer difficulties than some of the people who attend. If there's a safe place where the family member who is cared for can go to, it means that people who care 24 hours a day get a few hours of respite and really very much needed me time. I know this from personal experience. I'm also struck by how many of the members of the centre have said, we want to see our friends. I just want to draw attention to two words, community and friends. We're told that the centre will be replaced by offering activities and support in the community. I'd like everyone here to reflect on how many friends they have made by going to the cinema, going to a cafe, going shopping, going on a bus trip with another person. It doesn't happen. The centre has helped people who have challenges in their lives and thus less choice in life with people without those challenges to make friends, gain social confidence, enjoy group activities, learn life skills such as cooking, healthy eating, exercise, art, and much, much more. In short, they are part of a community, and that community has a centre. That community will be lost if the centre is closed. Anyone who lives in Abergavenny will be aware of the success of the well-established but fairly new Abergavenny Community Centre, based in the old Park Street School building. This centre is a huge asset to Abergavenny and has enriched the lives of hundreds of people, including many who were lonely and isolated. They now have a community. To suggest removing this would cause outrage. We need more opportunities for people to build safe communities for themselves, not fewer. I think there may be an opportunity to do more with Tudor Street rather than less. There may be opportunities to offer services and community to people like my husband, who found attending sessions in the Ash Day unit in Landoch Hospital, more than 30 miles away, invaluable, as he could talk to people with similar challenges to his own and share ideas and experiences to help improve his life. We should build more opportunities for people to come together and enhance each other's lives, not less. The space is there. Please consider the impact of this closure on the lives of people who use the centre and their families, and the opportunities to offer more people to help build safe places to be and learn and to make friends in Abergavenny. I'd just like to add also, I don't know how many people here who are not carers have actually tried to change somebody who's had an accident, unexpected, in one of the disabled loos in Abergavenny. It's really, really a most unpleasant experience. You've got people hammering on the door, you haven't got proper equipment, there's no hoist. It's really, really difficult. We need somewhere safe for people to go. I'm not happy for my husband has a carer who we pay for ourselves. He does go out with a dog by himself, but I'd be very worried about him spending more than an hour walking around with somebody in the community, because he's very difficult. He can be very, very difficult. And I do think it needs a lot more thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Sue Hughes, is she here? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She's not here. Okay. Thank you very much. My name's Kath Barton. I'm a concerned citizen of Abergavenny, and I'm reading a statement on Sue's behalf. This is what she says. I understand the pressures which Monmouthshire County Council currently face, but I'm deeply concerned by the proposed closure of the Tudor Street Day Centre. Having worked at the centre and with the users for several years, I have seen at first hand the importance of the centre as a meeting place and hub for some of the most vulnerable members of our community. The activities at the centre, as we know, were stopped during COVID, deeply affecting the lives of the centre users and their families. During the forced closure, I have experienced the difficulties of continuing to support those who previously used the centre. This has been particularly difficult when supporting those with more severe disabilities who are unable to access local facilities. which have little in the way of suitable activities, access or interest. I've spent time walking around Abergavenny in all types of weather conditions, pushing service users in a wheelchair unable to find appropriate toilet facilities. There is only so much time you can spend in cafes and shops, which provide little stimulation for service users. In fact, during this period, the lack of access to the centre's facilities has made my role much more difficult and has negatively affected my mental health. I know that as things continue to return to normality, the centre could offer a sense of community to those who have been deprived of the service during this period and provide the facilities required to help myself and other carers to carry out our role. I have read that the authority would like to move to a service which is based more on individual support without the need for a physical meeting place. To me, the centre is much more than somewhere where a particular section of our community spends the day. It has become somewhere that I and everyone else who uses the centre have formed friendships with users, other staff and the wider community. I've been involved in a number of events at the centre which have included the wider community and seen the joy which these events have brought to everyone involved. The excitement of the service users leading up to, during and after these events needed to be seen to be believed. I also believe that these events have increased understanding of the particular difficulties and needs of the service users within the wider community. During these events, friendships are formed and, more importantly, they bring our community together. The centre has also been used for organising social events and trips in the wider area, which I believe would have been made much more difficult, if not impossible, to organise if there was no place for the people involved with organising them to meet and plan and discuss choices with the service users. Going forward, I believe the centre has the potential not only to provide a service to those with additional needs, but to extend the use to the wider community, enriching the lives of everyone involved. I understand that an approach has been made to MCC regarding this type of use. Now more than ever, there is a need for somewhere for our community as a whole to come together, giving people the opportunity to help and be helped and to be valued. I realise there is a need for low-cost housing, which is proposed to replace the current facility, but surely it is the wrong approach to help one group of vulnerable people at the expense of another. If a society is judged on how it treats the most vulnerable, then closure of the centre will reflect badly, not just on us here today, but our community as a whole, and will become a poorer place for it. And I believe will have a significant negative effect on the quality of life of the service users, staff, and wider community. Thank you, and thank you for letting me read the statement.
Thank you, Sue. Can I ask anybody who's got a green light showing who isn't speaking could put their light off? Thank you. We also have Tony Keir, who is a councillor, wants to speak on behalf of a constituent, so we're going to let him speak next. Okay, Tony.
Thank you very much, Chair. My constituent, Sean, is aged 54 and has Down syndrome. He's a similar age to me, and I've known him virtually all of my life as the next door neighbour, a friend, and indeed as an honorary constable to us town council when I was mayor. He's quite a character. Prior to COVID, Sean was a regular weekly attendee at Tudor Road, his father says for donkey's years. He first found out about the scheme via work at Spa in Usk and now the Co-op. I regularly saw the Monmouthshire bus picking him up and others from outside our house. His father tells me how wonderful the service was at Tudor Road, and in particular, how it hugely positively changed his social skills and how enthusiastically he became PC literate. Sean refers to his wonderful mates there and now how he misses them. He and his family understood about the COVID closure and the reasons and have been continually asking me when it would reopen. The news I could only give him recently was one of full and permanent closure with no alternative. His phrase, and I will use it and I will apologise, was, "I'm pissed off." His father tells me of his social regression and that the Usk Hub and Post Office as an alternative, whilst a wonderful local service for so many, does not work for him. For Sean, he tells me He's lost his mates. He's lost his learning opportunities, and his parents, his elderly parents, tell me he's regressing in his social skills. His family are appalled. I was shocked to hear of this closure and what Sean had to tell me. On behalf of Sean and his family, I've been asked that this decision is reconsidered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. I understand attending a committee meeting and speaking is daunting, but your contributions have helped the committee in our scrutiny activity, so we are grateful for your time today. You're all very welcome to stay and observe the meeting as we work through the process. Okay, thank you. The call-in relates to the individual Cabinet member decision taken on the 30th of November 2022 relating to the use of the property located in Tudor Street ahead of the outcomes of the wider review of My Day, My Life services. The agenda includes the report taken to Cabinet, the integrated impact assessment, the Cabinet decision log and the call-in request. I'd like to ask Hazel to briefly talk through the call-in process.
Thanks, Chair. Just a few words really about a call-in and what this means, because we've got new councillors, but we've also got members of the public at the meeting. So the process that we follow this morning is the call-in procedure, which is part of our constitution. So it's to consider a decision that's already been taken and called in by members for scrutiny of this committee. Just to explain that this committee is not able to make a decision itself, but having followed the process here this morning, it can do one of three things. It can either accept the Cabinet member's decision, or it can refer the matter back to the Cabinet member to reconsider and give reasons, or it can refer the matter to full council for reconsideration with reasons. So the process allows for the members who requested the decision to be called in to speak first, which I believe is Councillor Haworth, so they need to outline their reasons for calling it in. Then the Cabinet member, Councillor Thomas, will be invited to respond, and officers can also respond. The Chair will then ask the Scrutiny Committee members to comment and to ask any questions, and then there'll be an opportunity for any other elected members who might be observing today to ask any questions prior to the committee considering the way forward. So only members of the Scrutiny Committee can agree the way forward. So just pass back to the Chair now, but just to outline how the process works.
Okay, I'm going to ask Simon Haworth to outline the decisions, the reasons for calling in the decision. You okay, Simon? Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm Simon Haworth, Councillor Simon Haworth from Gilwyn, Llanelli Hill and Clydach.
Could you speak up a little bit, Simon? Sorry. Thank you.
Nothing like me not to be heard. Yeah, I saw, I recollect a comment made in a meeting some weeks ago now, and I was dismayed really that we come to the decision on Tudor Gate, and the due process is for it to go on a forward plan, and the process would follow from that forward plan. That never occurred, and speaking to colleagues, to my associates, we felt that it was an important decision that we need to have we needed consultation on this, and I thought, well, yeah, I mean, that hasn't happened, due process hasn't happened. I know what due process is, I know how it operates, and I and colleagues decided that we must call this in. And I think today has made me even stronger on giving me reasons to call it in on the basis of the need which is out there. I'm going to allow my other colleagues to come in with the call-in, who signed with the call-in with me, because a lot of things I was going to say have been said during the members of the public. That's the passionate side of me, the politics side of me as well. And my other colleagues will bring that in, and then I will come in at the end if that's fine, Chairman. So my other colleagues with me in the calling as well, as we know we have a due process, I will allow them to come in and have their say about judicial reviews, about process, and where we've gone with this, which is totally wrong. And then I will come in then at the latter end then to say a final say then and sum up for everyone. Is that okay, Chairman?
Yes, Simon, that's fine. I'm just looking to see who. Were you proposing anybody first, or?
No, I have, there's three colleagues. I have Richard John, I have Councillor Taylor, and David Jones. He's a member of your committee, so I'm sure David will be part of your process as well. There's the four. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Can we start with you then, David? Is that all right?
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chair. I'm David Jones. I'm a member for the Scrutiny ward at the north of Monmouthshire. And as far as this process is concerned, I was rather concerned and quite dismayed, really, that this committee hadn't been asked to scrutinise the decision made by, or that might have been made by Councillor Thomas or as the individual cabinet member. And therefore, I was happy to support the call-in order to allow that scrutiny to take place. And for information for the public, the normal process, what normally happens is that a scrutiny committee scrutinises a decision before it's made, and the full feeling of the process is then made aware, made known to the cabinet member and other cabinet members. I shall leave the rest of the concerns to my colleagues who called in the process. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Can we go to Francis Taylor next, please?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think I'm very grateful to Councillor Howarth for drawing the individual cabinet member decision to attention, because it's true to say that when we looked at it, when we had an opportunity to look at the decision, we were extremely dismayed that we didn't feel that it had followed a due process, and that, really importantly, that due regard hadn't been given to the equalities aspects of this decision. So, as Councillor Jones points out, there had been no pre-decision scrutiny, which is really disappointing in a decision of this magnitude. It hadn't come to Cabinet, so there had been no opportunity to ask any questions about this particular decision. But I think for me personally, what I was particularly concerned about is that even in the papers for the individual cabinet member decision, there is no integrated assessment. In particular, I think the important aspect of that would have been the equality, previously known as, the equality impact assessment. The equality impact assessment is really necessary as part of our public sector equality duty. So as a council, we have a legal obligation to ensure that in our decisions, our policies, and our strategies, we consider the needs of all our citizens. And it feels to me, and I couldn't put any of the reasons as eloquently as the speakers this morning, Chair, so I won't at all attempt to do that. But I think, the purpose is we should do early assessment to identify any potential negative impacts on people with protected characteristics. And I think that what we've had this morning, Chair, is a whole range of really difficult negative impacts identified for people who have share a protected characteristic. under the Equality Act. And therefore, my concern would be that in proceeding with this kind of decision, because we have made no attempt to consult with either individuals or groups prior to this decision, we leave ourselves as a council open to judicial review, because we have, in my view, failed miserably to comply with the public sector equality duty in this decision. Now, we have heard, as I said, very eloquently from some of the people who use the service and who have relied on it, and also family supporters, previous employees, about the sort of kind of almost like options appraisal contained in the report, which doesn't seem to pass muster. But we haven't had the benefit of this conversation early on, and I think that it's really disappointing. And I don't see, quite frankly, how a decision of this magnitude could stand without being referred back to for further decision making, ideally to council, in my view, with a full equality impact assessment, with a full set of consultation responses from those affected, because this decision disproportionately affects people who rely on those services, people who are protected under the Equality Act. And I think that if without doing that, this decision could amount to unlawful discrimination, and that I find extremely concerning. I'm always interested to see how we are considering future generations' requirements and equalities in all our decision making. We've heard an awful lot from the administration about how that's very important to them, but I have to say actions speak louder than words. So I'm not at all content that this is the quality of our decision making in a council that I'm a member of, which is why I was moved to support the call-in. Thank you, Chair. I'll pass over to my colleague, Councillor John, who may want to add his reasons for calling in.
Thank you, Francis. Councillor Richard John.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll try to be brief and not repeat the excellent points that colleagues have just made. I wanted to start just by thanking everyone who members of the public who came in this morning and really illuminated the discussion. They spoke very powerfully, and I have massive admiration for their contributions. You know, the first time I spoke in the chamber, I was really nervous. So I'm all credit to the contributions they've made. Apologies for not being in the chamber with you today, but I wanted to just add some points about the call-in and the reasons why we think this decision needs to be looked at again. I just can't understand how on earth the administration can make this decision without any input from people who use these services. I was a member of the previous administration, which oversaw what we thought was a temporary closure of the day centre back in March 2020 as the pandemic began. And I have to say with some humility, it was painful to learn of the impact that this closure had during the pandemic. But it was a temporary closure made with the best of intentions to keep vulnerable people safe. I, along with Councillors Taylor, Howarth and Jones, called this decision in because we were appalled at the decision and the way it's been taken. If we set aside for a moment the rights and wrongs of the decision itself, I want to focus on the process, which I think is absolutely disgraceful. In August, the Cabinet commissioned a review of the My Day, My Life service, which we understand is due to report in the spring. Well, what on earth is the point in commissioning a review if you're not going to wait to learn the recommendations? But instead, to close a centre without any consultation, without any discussion or proper consideration of the impact on users themselves. When you run a council, you have to ensure that decision-making is robust and that decisions go through the appropriate channels. Cabinet members need to have confidence in making a decision that a proposal has been through proper challenge and scrutiny. This decision should never have been an individual cabinet member decision, because that allows a cabinet member to nod it through without scrutiny, without discussion. You need to think very carefully about where decisions go, and they need to go to the most appropriate place. Had this decision gone to a formal meeting, it would have enabled public participation, such as we've had this morning. It would have enabled other councillors to offer challenge and scrutiny, and cabinet members would have had to answer questions on their proposals. With an individual cabinet member decision, none of this happens. So where's the equality impact assessment to evidence that the impact on vulnerable people is being considered? Where's the future generations impact assessment? The new administration has 2 cabinet members with responsibility for engagement and equalities. So what's their role been in this? There was no public consultation. There was no pre-decision scrutiny by one of our select committees. A cynic would think that this is being rushed through to flog the land quickly to avoid new Welsh Government regulations about building on floodplains. That's TAN 15, which we've known for about 18 months, is coming in June 2023. We've heard from the eloquent contributions this morning about the value that the Tudor Street Day Centre has added to the quality of life of people who've used the service. I feel really disappointed that this decision has been made, but particularly about the way that it's been taken. I think this decision needs much more scrutiny. We need to hear much more from the public, and I would recommend that the committee refer this to council for further discussion, further public consultation, and proper decision making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard John. I'd like now to ask Tudor Thomas, Cabinet Member, to answer many of the questions that have been asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'm Tudor Thomas, and I'm Cabinet Member for Social Services, and obviously I took this decision. First and foremost, I would like to express my thanks this morning to all people here, from the members of the public and users of Tudor Street Day Centre, in taking the time and effort to come here and to address the meeting, and obviously that has been useful. And certainly I have been listening carefully today, and I will reflect on every message that I've heard today in terms of this decision. Obviously, it is up to the Scrutiny Committee to decide where this goes in terms of whether it is to full council or whether it goes to the Cabinet or whether it actually comes back to me. But can I make it very clear, at the start, that I did not take this decision lightly. I did not just do it at the drop of a hat. I've lived in Abergavenny for 40 years. I taught in King Henry VIII for 12 years. I was a head of department. I was on the management team. But more importantly, I actually went to Tudor Street Day Centre with sixth formers to do community service. But that was at a time, many years ago, when it was very fully used and very fully utilised. And therefore, there has been a change. But what I'm saying is, I certainly considered this as carefully as I could, and I did not rush it. I followed the procedure of individual cabinet member decision and discussed it with my leader, and that was felt to be the best way to go. But certainly in terms of making that decision, let's be honest, there has been a gradual decline in the number of people who regularly were using Tudor Street since 2014, and as the service moved away from a sort of a fixed base model and moved to a model where people with learning disabilities were experiencing alternative community-based support based on their preferences and interests. Even prior to COVID, the centre was only being used 3 days a week. It was not open 5 days a week. as far as I was made aware. Obviously, COVID did not help issues in terms of having to make that decision, and I wasn't in the administration then, as Councillor Richard John said. The former Conservative administration made that decision for people's health and safety, and that in some ways affected the thoughts about Tudor Street Centre. As far as I'm concerned, the closure of Tudor Street Day Centre does not signal a reduction in service for people with learning difficulties. My life is the MCC approach, and we will stay with that. And very much that is not just centred on buildings, but it's built on building relationships rather than a physical place. But that is not to say that there won't be a physical space for people to use in the future. Certainly, my day in my life, it was a conscious decision. I was not on the council then, neither was my chief officer at that time, but there was this move, probably nearly 10 years ago, 2014, away from dedicated facilities and bringing the client more into the community. And for them to feel part of it, and obviously as much as possible to enrich their lives and friendship. As far as it's been reported to me, this approach has worked, and it's grown not just in Monmouthshire, it's grown in the whole of the old sort of Gwent, sort of Torfaen, Newport, etc. It's certainly, as far as I'm concerned, it's not threatened. My day, my life is not threatened by budgetary constraints. It's budgeted for, and it is actually supported. In terms of Tudor Street, and I can understand, and everybody's said, spoken so well of it today, but Tudor Street is a very large property. It was originally fully utilised prior to my day, my life scheme coming into being. And it sort of took a sort of what I would call a one-size-fits-all, that people went there for the day. Yes, there were different activities, but restrictions in a sense as to what people could actually do. In the future, it is going to be a very high cost building to maintain, to recommission for a start, but also to maintain and also to run in terms of energy costs. So we're moving towards a carbon zero policy. We've got that policy in place. It will be very expensive, and certainly the feeling was that the money being used there would be much better spent in community-based activities. Certainly, COVID didn't help. That really affected people, and I can understand what people have said today. In terms of Abergavenny, there are other facilities available for this particular group of people. We've got places like the library. The theatre will soon be back open again. The Melville Theatre has an element of space. Abergavenny Community Centre and other places, including Mardy Park. I take your point about Mardy Park being further out and possibly not suitable for people who live in town. And although it doesn't seem far when you're travelling in a car, I can appreciate if you have to walk up to Mardy Park or get there by public transport or taxi, then it is not so practical. I'm certainly not writing off, and we as an administration are not writing off a hub, but based elsewhere, and which would be fitted out so that it could look after people in a dignified and proper way. Certainly, I note your point about the issue about the toilet facilities. There is nowhere in Abergavenny that I'm aware where you have specialist facilities to change somebody, whether it's a teenager or an adult, and that is something I think the administration, I think my colleague here, Sarah Birch, will come in afterwards and address. That is a glaring gap in the facilities, and I fully support that, and I'm fully sort of sympathetic and empathetic if you have a person that you have to change, not in suitable conditions. And I fully support the thought that somebody should have complete dignity, both for the person being changed and for the carer. And that is something that I would certainly support. In terms of a really brief timeline, I know time's running on now, but in terms of the rationale, I made an individual cabinet member decision in August, end of August, to actually review facilities provision, and we wanted an independent review because members of staff of social services were too really involved to make an independent review, and therefore we went to an outside provider to look at review My Day, My Life using a collaborative and inclusive approach, and looking and approaching people with learning disabilities, their families, their carers, so that we actually reviewed what they actually wanted. And the whole purpose of that review, setting aside Tudor Street at the moment, the whole purpose of that review was to establish the basis for the future. And I know we always talk about the past, and at my age, I think more about the past possibly than the future, but we all have attachments to buildings and to things that have always been there. But in reality, we do have to move on. And we have to provide the best service for people, and in reality, in a reasonably cost-effective way. We don't have an endless budget, but on the other hand, the background that I come from, my main purpose always is to look after people, and I won't actually move from that. But having that review will give us the basis, and that will not report back now until spring. It's something like the end of February, start of March, and that will be looking at all aspects of My Day, My Life. It'll also be looking at the concept of an actual place, a hub, and I take your point about wandering around when it's cold and wet and going into the trading post, which is fine, but after you've been there a while, obviously there's not a great deal to do. So I'm not ruling out the fact that there will be a base. At this point in time, I can't honestly say, well, yes, it's going to be here or it's going to be there. But the other thing, and it's not setting, one group of disadvantaged people against another, but we are really in a very, very difficult position in terms of social housing. And you have people who have children, or if they're individuals on their own, or they are people with learning difficulties, who are not able to, obviously in an expensive county like this, to be able to afford their own house. And we all know in this area how expensive housing is. So obviously that had an effect in terms of making that decision, and that did really bring forward the concept of closing Tudor Street, but in fact it was closed at that point. And actually to recommission that would obviously be extremely expensive. There was the factor of this change in legislation rather, TAN 15, in terms of where you can build on the floodplain. But that wasn't the only factor. It was a factor in making that decision. And certainly that will help. In terms of making this decision, obviously I appreciate a huge decision, and it's up to Scrutiny. If Scrutiny want to will make that decision today where they want to send this decision. I will stand by it. And the sort of person that I am, I will not make a decision lightly, and I will not make a decision as it were, in the cold without the report which I had from my chief officer and discussion with my leader. But obviously, I will be held to account for that if it's sent to council or if it's sent back to the cabinet. And obviously, they will then decide whether that decision is adhered to or it is overturned. But in my heart of hearts, I felt when I made that decision, it was the right decision. I wasn't making it in the cold. I realised there would be implications. And obviously the people who've come here today have set those out extremely fairly and extremely courteously. And I will think on that and reflect on that going forward. And obviously, I might well be called to account for it either by Cabinet or the Council. And I wouldn't say I'm happy to do that, but I'm prepared to do that in terms of the decision that I made. I followed the process in terms of making an individual Cabinet member decision. I didn't do it secretly. The paper was published, the decision was published, letters went out to users so that they were aware of what was happening. So I hand on heart, I can't say that I went totally awry there. And at the end of the day, in making these sorts of decisions, then you have to be confident in yourself and in your own conscience that you are making the right decision. So, you know, to sum up, we'll wait for the review, and depending on what that says, if that implies that we need a hub or some base for some activities and not necessarily out of town as vis-a-vis Mardy Park, then obviously we will have to follow that. So, you know, really my advice, and you might well reject it, I'm sure, you know, many people will want to reject it, but my advice would be to wait for that review and to see what it actually says in terms of what people actually use the service want and how they want to see it to develop. And from there, we will then, you know, move forward. I hand over now to my Chief Officer, who's going to raise one or two issues.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Okay, we are now going to invite comments from People's Scrutiny Committee members, who are the ones who will make decisions today. So we have a number of hands up, as we call it. Councillor Powell, Maureen Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been councillor for 15 years. It was Castle Ward, it is now Pennyval Ward. So I'm very familiar with Abergavenny and all the workings there. Many years ago, well, not that many years ago, there was a centre at Coed Glass, similar to Tudor. And then it was all pulled down, it was sold, and there are 56 properties on there now. I wonder, were the people told at that time that moving to Tudor Centre was only a temporary issue? That is one question. The other question is, how many houses are you going to fit on that spot? You know, it makes me wonder. I would also like to say there are quite a few building things on plans that haven't been constructed yet, so there are houses going to be built. In actual fact, we lost 30% of low-cost housing from Raglan because the planning committee passed it. I think it was 100, oh, Mark will tell, no, 115, I think, and it was turned down by the Welsh Government. So, I mean, really and truthfully, we were doing our best to build low-cost housing. It seems rather sad to me that the quality of life should be governed by the cost. These people, it's not just having somebody go with them and a facility for changing and that, it's the community. It's meeting their friends of like. I have a grandson who is autistic and he lives in Kent, and he goes to, he calls it his club, Caspers, and they do wonderful things, they learn things, they do drama, they get taken on trips. It's like one big family. Now this is what you're going to take away from these people. and I'm very concerned about it. And you say it's because they closed it for COVID. Well, I should think that since COVID, it's far more important now to reopen it and get the people back together, because we've suffered long enough from the isolation of COVID. So I'm very sorry, I do not agree with this, and I do not agree with the process where it wasn't brought to this committee for scrutiny and then to full council before the decision was made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, can I just say to all of the speakers, you all spoke so brilliantly today and very passionately. And I want to make a particular mention to Sarah. I don't know if she's still in the chamber, but really well done to you. It's not easy speaking up in there. And again, it was really good to hear firsthand all of your comments. I have a cousin who has Down syndrome, and he's a wheelchair user. So I can very much relate and empathise with the situation for service users and their families. I know firsthand the importance that day centres, such as Tudor House, offer to the most vulnerable within our society. I fully understand the financial pressures that Monmouthshire County Council are under. However, I am acutely aware that once a service has gone, that generally it is lost forever and very difficult to get back. Therefore, I feel it is right not to rush this important decision, which affects not just the vulnerable within our community, but the community itself. Having read the report and reading between the lines, it seems to me that the decision is a financial one and a housing one, with little regard for the service users, their families and volunteers themselves. To me, the housing argument for homes in the north part of the county doesn't stack up, especially in light of the proposals for 500 houses in Abergavenny East under the replacement local development plan. I also don't understand the rush, because the target for 2,200 homes within the county is for over the next 10 years. Therefore, why haven't we had a thorough and transparent review and consultation which has been carried out within a suitable, timely manner? I was pleased to read the proposals around the gathering pitch. I always believe in giving people or situations a second chance. Often people or services come back bigger, better, stronger, and with more determination to succeed. And I really do feel that hearing people today that I believe strongly that will happen here. The gathering offers some great community opportunities, such as a community cafe, garden, sensory room, workshops, training, bookshops, warm space, etc. And even if only half of those things come to fruition, I think it would be a wonderful thing for the community. Day centres such as this are multifaceted and don't just provide a place for vulnerable users, but also for their families. And as we've heard, they provide respite for parents and carers. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, my auntie and uncle have experienced this themselves through my cousin with Down syndrome. They provide employment, they provide volunteering opportunities. However, most importantly for me, I believe that they provide a space to encourage good mental health and a chance to combat loneliness. To me, both of those things are far more important than reaching a housing target or liquidating an asset for financial purposes. So in short, I feel that the decision process has been wrong, and I would like to see a thorough review and for it to then go to full council and not to an individual cabinet member. I know that Tudor has said that he made the decision and discussed it with the leader, but was it also discussed with the whole cabinet? Because surely such an important decision would have been discussed more widely. A few other questions that I also have. which are, you know, with if it was to get developed, how many homes would the centre provide? The report talks about the number of users, and it mentions 17 or 18. Does that number consider the care workers, the volunteers, etc.? The cost for keeping the centre going, we've had no financial input and evidence based on that. What other centres or activities are in the area? And also, is there an opportunity to link with other counties such as Torfaen and Blaenau Gwent? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. I'm aware that, Councillor Lucas, you have your hand up. I'm going to bring you in after. If we could have Councillor Buckler next, please.
Good morning. I'd like to start by saying how very moved I have been by the testimony and the evidence of the members of the public, and I really do appreciate it. I'm very sorry I can't be with you. I feel it's so important this to be discussed and considered carefully. I really wanted to be here, but I'm afraid I'm ill. But I take it. I'm very impressed with how everyone who's spoken, and it has had a great effect on all of us, I know. What I'd like to say is that there seems to me, from what we've heard and discussed already, that there is absolutely a place, and a vital place, for community-based solutions, and and also day centre solutions. They should go in tandem. They shouldn't be exclusive. There should be a place for both, most definitely. The cabinet member, Councillor Tudor Thomas, has said that he's considered things carefully, but I don't see the process that's been done is a careful and considered way to go about it. It needs much bigger scrutiny. It should have come to the scrutiny committee before, and it is affecting a huge number of people in the Monmouthshire area, and it's too important just to be sort of nodded through. And I personally think it should be reviewed properly. The review that was done in November, I consider, is not deep enough. It doesn't consider enough issues. There are no budgets, there are no costings, and it is, it is very, very flimsy, I would say, and is not a basis to make a decision on. For it to be to be considered on the housing, and the lack of affordable housing, I think is the wrong way to go about it. We shouldn't be causing grief and hardship to members of the council area with learning difficulties just because we need to find some more affordable housing. It shouldn't be the way to do it. We have to consider the views and the needs of the people who need these services first and foremost, and that should be absolutely top of our priority. We need to think for the long-term future, and we need these services. We are a compassionate and caring council, and all the councillors who put themselves forward to represent you are very much have you in mind, and that's the way I'm sure, and I know that we all want to be. To say that the users have dwindled and that is a reason to consider the closure, that isn't. It cannot be considered to be fair, bearing in mind we've had the pandemic and the disruption in services. So that is not a fair way to consider it. There needs to be a proper evidence-based review, and we need much more clarity and engagement. And I want to see the local community, the users, and anyone who's affected to have a proper say. And I don't think this is the case. And I strongly believe that we need more scrutiny on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Buckler. Councillor Lucas?
Thank you. I can wholeheartedly say with admiration of everybody that's spoken in the chamber this morning, it's without a shadow of a doubt a scary experience, and I'm in awe of you. So I can only clap my hands at you all. So well done. Okay, for me, the greatest problem is we seem to be just making a decision by one person without scrutiny, without any worries for anybody else. And I quote him, I'm afraid I wrote it down, in my heart of heart, it was the right decision. Well, in my heart of heart, it's not the right decision. So without going over everybody's words that everybody said, which I believe is correct, for me, there's not enough scrutiny. How many houses? Councillor McKenna made the very valid point. We're about to hopefully build a huge area of new housing in Abergavenny, which will cover all of that. We're forgetting, and that's the most important thing I think here, we're forgetting that these people have their rights of their own. Where are we in this? Are we not considering what they are going through? We should be. Who are we to say they don't deserve their own area? And it's not just them at all. As everybody has said, it's everybody else. But we should also be encouraging that hub, as one very good person pointed out, I believe it was a former worker there, it was self-funding. Are we missing a trick here? Also, has the town council been involved? What about warm spaces? We're all for these warm spaces, yet we seem to be missing this. It's such a big subject. It's huge. And for one person to make a decision, I'm sorry, I do question that. Also, did the whole of the cabinet get to have a decision-making process on this? Anyway, I won't reiterate everything because it's not fair, and I think it's all been said, but I strongly believe that we need to review this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Councillor Eason?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for members of the public coming today and making their case. I understand where Councillor Thomas is coming from and the recommendations he's come up with, but I'm concerned about the process that's gone on regarding this. The part that does concern me is the fact that within the recommendations 2.3, that the Chief Officer of Resources and the Cabinet Member of Resources would have terms to be agreed with them on the process of selling off the land when it gets to that stage. I sat on audit committee for 14 years, and quite a number of times coming before audit committee are issues of officers making decisions, or in conjunction with other people, making decisions which are then given an exception. I think with this case, if it gets to that level of decision, I think it should employ and constitute the full procurement processes rather than just a decision between a cabinet member and a chief officer. It's a big decision to make. I think that the cabinet ought to have another look at this myself, but I do believe also that we are being held to ransom by TAN 15. TAN 15 is going to change in the summer, but we don't create the problem. Councils haven't created the problem in the south of Wales, but there's been a big problem in the north or mid-north part of Wales, Powys in particular, where there's been massive permits, 300 permits to create farming, which creates sewage and most of the phosphorus. So we are now living on the back of the failure of the authorities in NRW to not control those phosphates at that stage. Scotland had done it. They reduced the levels from 38% to capacity of maybe 99%. So whilst I believe that the cabinet members come forward with a decision which he feels is correct, I also feel we should be challenging the view of where we can build houses, and also how we actually employ our officers to come with use the proper constitution process, procedural process to deal with it. On the recommendations, there are 4 cabinet members involved, as far as I'm concerned. So I think it was not good to have a single member decision. It should have been a wider decision, and maybe looking at that, the cabinet should have another look at this and come forward with views which encompass how we deal with it, how the planning application, which may be coming shortly, is dealt with in the proper process. So I can understand the need for change in facilities. I've got one in my ward in Herbert Road. I'm not quite sure where that is in the scheme of things, but that is being redeveloped now. That went through a traumatic period last year, but that is being rebuilt. But I believe that this is a big issue. I'd like Cabinet to come back with some thoughts on what I'm saying about the process that we're following through to make sure that everything we do is properly is squeaky clean. I don't think it should go to council. I think we should have a relook at the office should have a relook at the recommendations coming forward to us. It may be the right decision to sell off the ground. It may not, but I do believe it should be done as a consensus decision rather than a single member decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. I would like to ask a few questions in 2 capacities now. The first capacity being as chair of this committee. Although the matter of the debate's reasonably clear, the reason why we're in this position is less so. This is not the first decision that's not been scrutinised and the process has not been followed. We can't unilateral decision-making creates distrust between members, the public, officers and the cabinet, and it's not likely to achieve the best results. So I would ask that proper process is followed and decisions of this nature are discussed first by, as I say, process being followed and things being put on the forward planner. This is a large building. I went to look at it myself over the holiday and it appears underutilised. But until we receive the review conclusion, we have no idea what will replace it, and these are uncertain times. So I would like some clarification of what is being proposed and where it will be situated. In my own ward, the Bulwark Community Centre has bid and been successful in that bid for 90k to install these sort of facilities, and this figure is being matched by the town council. If it's not considered to be necessary in the north of the county, I don't understand the demography that it's clearly being needed in the south of the county. In my experience, if you don't provide facilities to people who need them, they either move away, but they certainly don't move to the area. And I would like to know if this is in any way some sort of policy. And I'd like to give an example of Hereford, which has excellent RNIB facilities and has a much higher population of people with sight problems than most other areas. So what I'm asking is, are we an inclusive or an exclusive society in Monmouthshire? Are we going to provide facilities that improve the quality of life, or are we going to, as perhaps in the way of our homeless people, if we don't provide facilities, they move on to Newport. So I do think we need to look at the wider picture, and I would like to know whether what policies could be put in place that actually provide the facilities that we currently appear to need, or we will know if we need when we have the results of the review. Thank you. Councillor Jackie Strong.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise for my croaky voice. I'd like to start by just looking back. When I left school, I went to work in a large learning disability hospital near Bristol. So I've had over 50 years of working with disabled people, people with a learning disability, and later on as a social worker. So I think I've got quite a lot of experience around disability issues, as well as having a parent, mother, that was significantly affected by a major stroke when I was about 14. So I would like to welcome the comments that were read out by Professor David Abbott at the beginning of this meeting, as well as some of the comments from our local residents that use Tudor Street, or were using Tudor Street facilities. Now, I have real concerns about this one-member decision. It seems like there's been two conflated decisions when really there should have been one. It should have followed process. If a review had been instigated, why on earth didn't we wait for the outcome of that review before the decision was made on Tudor Street? I really take on board carers. I've been a carer myself. I've been paid as a sort of social carer as well. Aimlessly walking around trying to entertain the person that you're looking after. That's not good quality social care. We should be providing a base for people to congregate, to make friends, to develop friendships. And it's not just, I accept it's not just about a building, but until we've got some idea about what we do in the future, why on earth are we doing this now? So I would like it to go back to Cabinet for a rethink, and actually not to conflate the two issues, to look at, what are we going to do about facilities and support for people with a learning disability for our residents, and also then look at what options there might be should the decision be made that Tudor Street is not fit for purpose. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. That's the last of our committee questions. So I would like to ask if there are any other elected members who would like to speak. Councillor Howarth.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I will stand. As I pointed out early on in the process, I would like to come back in as a signature for the call-in. My colleagues who were with me in the call-in, they spoke very eloquently and made the point of, well, some of the points why we're here today. And I don't want to be here today. I don't want to be here ever again, really. I want people who are in our society who are the most vulnerable, and they are the most vulnerable. They didn't ask to be here, i.e. in a wheelchair, severely disabled. They didn't ask for that. But what we can is give them some respect and help them the best we can, which we have done. As a council, we are fair with that, i.e. we treat people with respect. Up to the middle of December we did, mind you. Since then we haven't. Tudor, I'm sorry, as Cabinet member, you've listened to nothing which has been said today. Mr Abbott, he made it very eloquently clear in his letter to this council that what we can do and what we can't do and what we must do and what we have to look into. I don't think you've listened to anything what's been said today. I'm sorry, but that's my feeling listening to what you were saying there. You've listened to nothing. If there was one or two people using that day centre, for me, we keep it open. They have got nothing else. Nothing. Nothing. Yes, we can find them a new building, which is great. How many people have been into that centre in the last 6 months and had a look round it and seen out what the conditions like? I bet nobody's been in there. I've seen no report. There's no report in your document. Why haven't we got a report in there? The numbers. I see people shaking their heads in here about the numbers. We've got no idea what numbers we're using that before COVID. I've been to many functions there, Tudor, and actually really good functions. Fundraising, like the lady said. And there's plenty of avenues we can take with Tudor Gate. There's plenty of avenues we can give these people a little bit of sanity. You imagine all the older people out there who've had people coming through who've been disabled for many, many years. They're getting older now. They're fighting them isn't there. I reckon we could fill this place 10 times over with people who want to come and help to save Tudor Gate. If we don't save Tudor Gate, we need a hub for these people. You said that in one of your comments there. We need something for them. It's so important. They've got nothing else. So thank you for signing the call in, you guys. I think it was important that we have due process. I think this won't stop here now. The decision will be made today by this committee on the direction of where we're going to go. I do hope that actually we have a thorough debate on it and actually a full consultation on this on a way forward. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth. I'm aware that we've had lots of statements, but very few actual questions for the officers to actually answer. I know that Councillor Sarah Birch, who is Cabinet Member for Housing, would like to answer some of the points that have been made. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been asked to answer the questions that relate to the building and to the decision to develop the site for social housing and why there is a need to make an urgent decision. And I would like to thank everybody who's come here today and spoken about what the Tudor Street Day Centre has meant to people and how there is a need to have a facility that brings people together. But in December, we had 3,448 households registered in this county as in household need. Of those, 561 households were in the highest priority band. And that includes 307 households who are homeless and who we have a duty to house. So whereas my colleagues are absolutely correct in making the point that we have plans to bring forward new housing on a number of sites, we need as many affordable homes as we can get. We will need those future sites that are being identified in the replacement local development plan, but we also need sites that we can develop relatively quickly, because there are children and vulnerable people who spent Christmas in unsuitable temporary housing and people who can't get on with their lives because they don't know where they'll be living next year. And one of the big financial pressures this council is facing, which is having an impact on other services, is the cost of keeping people in bed and breakfast hotels. So every new home that we can provide is a step in the right direction. And the feasibility study that has been done on this site identifies that by converting the existing building and developing alongside it, we can provide, I believe it's 18 units of accommodation. So when I first came into this role, following the election in May, I started asking questions about all the properties and land that the council owns, including unused or apparently underused buildings, like the one in the Tudor Street, like the Pensioners' Hall in Abergavenny, the Market Hall in Monmouth. Basically, looking at all the assets that the council holds and ensuring that we're trying to identify those where we can bring forward affordable housing, as we are really not in a situation easily to go purchasing land in competition with developers for reasons that you will appreciate. So looking at, with the property team, where the council has opportunities to develop social housing, either directly or through a housing association. The other thing is that we're all aware of the climate emergency and of the commitment of this council to reduce its carbon footprint. We are on a journey to become a zero carbon council. And I give all credit to the previous administration and previous council who started us on that journey. So the work has been going on to establish which buildings that the council owns can go with us on that journey, and which are simply too costly, too difficult to bring up to an environmentally responsible standard. I have to say, I think Tudor Street is one of the latter, a huge and thermally inefficient building, which before the pandemic was being heated to provide services for very few people. The other urgency is the likely change in planning regulations, specifically Technical Advice Note 15, which relates to flood risk, and not, as Councillor Easton has suggested, to the phosphates issue, which is a separate but related issue. So Wales currently has some of the tightest planning rules around flood risk, unlike England, where they seem to be building in historic floodplains all the time. Currently, there's a prohibition on building homes in places that are known to flood, which is sensible. So outside areas that are known to flood, the planning authority, that is our planners and the councillors on the planning committee, can consider whether any potential risk has been appropriately mitigated. Obviously, we are in a climate emergency. We are seeing more extreme weather events and the likelihood of rising sea levels, more flash flooding, and so on. And the Welsh Government has brought forward a revised detailed flood risk map, which takes into account not only floods within living memory or within historical record, but also an assessment of theoretical future risk. So based on contours and distance from the Kibbe and the river, part of the Tudor Street site falls within that new boundary. Actually, large parts of most Welsh towns fall within that boundary. And the WLGA has asked the Welsh Government for more flexibility when considering applications in built-up areas on already developed sites. Basically, the continuing ability for councils to make a case-by-case assessment of risk and mitigation. And if you know Abergavenny, and some people here have lived there longer than I, you would realise that Tudor Street has never flooded and is not at a significant a significant flood risk, and that any risks there we believe that could be mitigated. So I do not believe that to convert the building and develop it for flats as proposed would be putting people at risk of flooding. However, if a planning application considered before June this year would be decided on its merits by our planning committee and could include conversion of the existing building, whereas if the Welsh Government don't listen to the representations from the Welsh Local Government Association, we could find ourselves with a site that can't be developed for housing, or that could only be developed by demolishing the building and building on the rear part of the site. So I would ask that even if this committee refers the decision, because as with regards to the formal closure of Tudor Street Day Centre and what will replace it in terms of services until after the closure of the review and the consideration of that and the bringing forward of plans for future service provision, that we proceed in the interim with a planning application so that when a decision is made, that we have both options, but the council has both options before it. Speaking also as a resident of Abergavenny, I found, and as a fellow social entrepreneur, I found Owen's proposal very interesting for a hub. However, we have in Abergavenny 2 former schools which have been made available to the community for community use. We also have at least half a dozen I can think of community halls, church halls and other community facilities quite apart from the hub, the town hall and market hall complex, quite apart from the leisure centre, quite apart from Mardy Park. Now, I think our challenge is to ensure that all of our facilities in the town are fully inclusive, which currently they are not. And I would propose, the Place Scrutiny Committee has on its work plan a review of public toilet provision. And I've already asked that that review of public toilet provision includes the provision of changing places, toilet provision in every town in the county, and how we make that available, to people who are taking part in activities. It's an area where I have challenged Monlife in terms of the leisure centres and our other facilities as to how we make those, all the facilities that the council is proposing to keep, all the facilities for the community in our town and all the facilities which the council has across the county for leisure and enjoyment, fully inclusive. And I do commit to taking that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Sorry? Come here. As your proposal has been referred to, would you like to come in here? I cannot go round to every member of the public again, but your proposal has been referred to, okay?
Yeah? Yeah. Thank you. I just want to raise some concerns, really, from hearing Tudor and Sarah. So my big concerns are you're missing the point that you're saying you've got all these other places that people can go, but you haven't put these people to these new places. But also, the big key thing you're missing is that My Day, My Life at Tudor Street, they weren't just care workers there, they were support workers. They had space to work with people, to find out what they wanted and give them the activities that they wanted. That's gone because that centre's gone. You're saying My Day, My Life's still here, but that centre wasn't just a place to go, it was a place to evolve, develop things, create things. I worked there during the time that you're saying it decreased. I was there till 2017. Tudor, you ignored me because you continued to carry on what you obviously prepared to say before you came here, rather than hearing what I said and changing what you said, because I was there before 2017 and it was buzzing. It was buzzing. We were going around the community. We were going around all different places you want to do, as you say, but we still had a centre to allow that, and we also had a centre to do things to bring out to the community. Like I mentioned one thing briefly. Someone did art. Lots of people did art. We went to Tinton. We went to other places and did that, but Tudor Street is where they developed that work so they could bring it out to the community. I think you're just missing those key things. And also, I just think the main thing I want to say really is I really think, Tudor, you're saying that you've listened and your heart's in this and the place means to you. If that building really means a lot to you, I think you will reconsider and say that we need to keep it, because it was just you and a leader apparently that made the decision, and I've just got over 1,000 signatures saying they want to keep it. So if we're going to go from that, I think obviously we know that people want to keep the centre, and the centre is important to keep. We need to keep the centre. It's got all the facilities that we need. We mentioned the disability toilets. I appreciate you both taking that into account, but the stuff's there. You're going about budget, money, the stuff is there already. So why get rid of it? And Sarah, you're saying about, we got to get rid of this building because we've got to have these houses because people can't be homeless. Well, yes, of course people can't be homeless, but why are you going to now take these people to another building and look for somewhere else when they've already got it? It's like you're getting rid of something that's already there, and you keep saying, oh, we'll find this stuff we'll look out for this stuff that we need, but it's there. And I know I keep repeating myself, but it's just very clear that hub is important for people. It's needed. You say, oh, we think about the past, and the past is lovely. No. We're not talking about the past. We're not even talking about the future. We're talking about the present. And people need this hub now.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, sorry, Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Owen, for those comments. I have been listening and not just giving out a prepared sort of speech. In reality now, it's up to this committee. It's not up to me. I made that decision, and I made it perfectly legally. I didn't, do it, behind the back door of County Hall, etc. Obviously, a lot of people are unhappy with it, but other people have contacted me and said, yes, they are happy with it. So it's difficult. But at the end of the day now, it's not my decision. It's the decision of this Scrutiny Committee because it's been called in, and I have no problem with that. And I do dispute Councillor Simon Howarth that I wasn't listening. I am listening. I do have a good ability to listen, but also I have a responsibility for the whole budget, which is probably in excess of 56 million, but covers everything from adult services, child protection, etc. And at the moment, currently running well over budget by a number of millions. So it's not quite as easy as you say, well, it's there, let's run it for 2 people, etc. It's not quite as easy as that. But the decision now is out of my hands. It's into the Scrutiny Committee to decide where it goes. So thanks very much.
Hello, we have another 2 councillors waiting to come in. We can't keep coming back. I'm really sorry. We are governed by time here. Councillor Wright, would you like to come in now?
Thank you, Chair. I am pleased that this call-in has happened, to be honest. I am glad to have been given the opportunity to hear from service users and carers who are in the chamber today, and I'm just sorry I can't be there in person to meet with you. I share a lot of the concerns that have been raised about the process that has led to this decision. I am not happy about the way that it has disenfranchised service users, carers, and indeed other elected members, including myself as the councillor for Growfield Ward, where Tudor Street Daycare Centre is located. So in my opinion, we really should be waiting for the outcome of proper consultation before any decisions are made and not trying to just rush this through. So my request to the committee members is that you do vote to send this for proper scrutiny. And finally, my offer is open to meet privately or with any of the people who've come to the chamber today, any of the service users or carers who use Tudor Street Day Centre, and my contact details are publicly available, so please always feel free to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Richard John, could you ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. A number of councillors have asked the question, excuse me, a number of councillors have asked the question, was this discussed by Cabinet? Councillor Thomas said that while he made the decision, he and he alone made the decision, he did discuss it with the leader. Can he confirm whether this was discussed by the rest of Cabinet, please?
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, just to make it clear, it wasn't discussed with the rest of the Cabinet. It was discussed with the leader, but as the actual procedure said, it is an independent Cabinet member decision. And obviously I made that decision. So, in answer to your question, no, it wasn't discussed with the Cabinet. Thanks.
I hate to contradict my colleague, but my recollection is that actually we discussed it at length in informal Cabinet. And certainly I was fully aware of it, and so was the Cabinet member for resources, as the other Cabinet members whose portfolios are affected as part of this decision. Yeah, but that was some time ago, and we've dealt with a great many things since.
Yeah, but just to clarify, I was talking there about formal Cabinet. It wasn't discussed at formal Cabinet.
Indeed,
I agree with you. I pass to my knowledgeable colleague on the side here. Thanks.
Okay, could I ask Matthew Gatehouse to clarify a point for us, please?
Yes, excuse me. Thanks very much, Chair. Matthew Gatehouse, Head of Policy, Performance and Scrutiny. Just coming in really for a point that councillors are aware of because it's been sort of shared with them, but for members of the public and anyone watching at home and in the gallery here, just to be clear, there was an impact assessment published alongside the decision on the council's website. So just a point of clarity, it was referred earlier that one wasn't published. It was published alongside the papers on the 30th of November, and similarly a full impact assessment was published alongside the decision taken by Councillor Thomas in August to launch the review of My Day, My Life. So just a point of clarity.
Thank you. I'm aware that we're going to have to move forward here, and I'd like to ask, are there any officers who would like to answer any more questions or make any more points in relation to this?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So, hello, I'm Matt Phillips. I'm the Chief Officer for People and Governance and also the Monitoring Officer. So as the Monitoring Officer, I'm the senior lawyer in the organisation, and I have a statutory responsibility for ensuring things are carried out legally and fairly. I also have the Democratic Services Department sits within my directorate as well. So I'm conscious that there's been a number of questions raised about the procedural element, which is why I just wanted to address the committee. So the way that the council operates in terms of decision making and what have you is decisions are delegated to different layers throughout the authority. For example, every time a parking ticket is given out to someone, it doesn't require us to bring the 46 councillors together to make a vote on it. It is one of those powers that is delegated to an officer. So the vast majority of powers are actually delegated for the day-to-day business of the authority to officers throughout the authority. But you've then got some of those decisions which are required by law to be made elsewhere. So a number of those, such as the budget, have to be made by council. So that's the full council, 46 councillors coming together, and then the decision is made following a debate on the basis of technical reports given to them and on the basis of a vote. And the way that the executive system works in councils, because there are different types of councils you have, you will know in England you have mayor-led councils, for example. There used to be committee-led councils, but this is an executive council. So you have a cabinet who are chosen by the leader, and the leader is chosen by council, and council made that decision in May at the annual general meeting every year. So what happens with decisions that are not legally required to sit with council and haven't been delegated to officers is they by default will sit as an executive decision unless council has stipulated that they should sit elsewhere, and this is all contained within the Constitution. Forgive me for the slightly long-winded way of trying to explain this, but I just wanted to set out where some of the decision-making lies. So scrutiny is a fundamentally important part of an executive council because you have a small, a representative body of councillors sat within cabinet who are making decisions, and there needs to be the ability for a check and a balance for that process, which is why we have these committees, scrutiny committees. The way that a scrutiny committee decides what business it's going to discuss at every meeting is it will look at something called the Forward Work Programme, which is a big old spreadsheet of decisions that we know will be coming up through the year. Some things we know about because they happen at the same time every year. The budget happens in March every year, for example. But of course, while a scrutiny committee will sit down at the beginning of the year and decide what it is that it's going to look at on the basis of what it knows is coming up, stuff comes up throughout the course of a year that wasn't anticipated. In fact, it's probably fair to say the majority of items that get discussed and decided on come up without being known at the beginning of the year. That is the nature of a kind of dynamic organisation, the situation, the impact that budgets will have and what have you. So I know the Tudor Street decision wasn't something that was part of the planning at the beginning. When I say the beginning of the year, I talk about May. That's the kind of constitutional year. When it did come up as an issue, and it was clear that it would need a decision making, it came up at a point, and this is where the process has let us down, so, forgive me, but it came up at a point where at the last people scrutiny meeting, the agenda had been dispatched. So the agenda had a list of all the upcoming decisions on it. This was the 7th of November when the agenda went out. The Tudor Street issue came up on the 9th, hence the reason that there was an old forward work plan that was then considered by the people scrutiny meeting at the next meeting. Now, the check and balance to that, and that's the fact, that's why it didn't end up in the agenda for the last people scrutiny meeting, is you've got someone like me sat there trying to keep an eye on all of the different reports that are coming through, and I missed this one. So I wholeheartedly apologise. I can only agree that it is the kind of topic that would normally go into a scrutiny meeting, but it didn't go in. The fallback to that, of course, is the call-in process, which is what you've seen in operation today. So I'm grateful to the councillors who picked this up, put the call-in in, and I'm very grateful for everyone who's attended today so that this process has happened. Now, in terms of going forward, Chair, if I may, if you're happy for me to get into those elements. So the decision-making power that the Scrutiny Committee has effectively falls down to a choice of one of three options. One is to vote to take no further action. The second option would be to refer the matter back to the decision maker, and the third option would be to refer the matter on to council. If the matter is referred to council, then council can consider the matter and debate it, but their options are twofold. One, to take no further action, or two, to refer it back to the decision maker. So if the decision today is taken to refer it to council, I would expect it to appear in the council. It has to happen within 10 days. Council sitting on the 19th of January, so it would be debated then. I appreciate, however, some of the points that have been raised about the review process that's been going on, and I understand clearly that would happen within the kind of time of that review still going on, so it wouldn't necessarily answer some of those questions that have been raised. Any concerns raised in that meeting would be fed back into the decision maker as well. Quite how that would work, there would be a written record of the meeting, obviously, and then someone would represent council, probably the chair, would represent council at a meeting with either the decision maker, individual cabinet, or full cabinet, if that was how it went. If you take the decision today to refer it back to cabinet, then the same process happens. All of the points that have been raised today will be captured between the chair and Hazel as a scrutiny manager, checked with the committee to make sure that they're an appropriate representation of what happened. That would then be provided to the decision maker, and if it was cabinet who were going to sit and make the decision, then the chair would attend cabinet meeting to make that representation as well. So I've said decision making a few times because I did note that Councillor Thomas said early on that he would be comfortable with the idea of it going to cabinet. I will pause just to make sure I'm not misrepresenting you. That's still possible. Even though Councillor Thomas made the decision as an individual cabinet member, it is still possible for it to go to full cabinet. That meeting would take place on the 18th of January. So if that was to happen, then it would be the chair bringing all of the points that have been raised here into that decision-making process. I'll stop there, Chair, because there's a couple of questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad that Matt Phillips has clarified that in the sense of why the decision came to me. But a suggestion that I would make, and I don't in any way sort of influence the committee, but in reality, we've got a large-scale independent review going on. That is not going to feed back until something like the 24th of February. My suggestion would be to hold fire until then, because then we would have much stronger evidence to make a decision, and also the issue of identifying a suitable place. But the review would have gone ahead. I think if we go on either the Cabinet or full Council in 18th, 19th of January, we won't have that evidence. So, that would be my suggestion. Thanks.
Could I just ask you something on that, Councillor Thomas? I wondered if you could confirm whether or not that review is on track or not. Is it following the timelines that we've been given?
I defer to Rogers, I'm my Chief Officer.
Thank you.
It's still on track for early March. There was some slippage, but it's still on track for early March.
Because the timescale I have is it would be completed on February the 24th.
Yeah, there's some slippage to that, so it's early March.
Early March. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Howarth?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask legal there, reference to if this was referred back to Cabinet and not to Tudor Thomas as Cabinet member, does that mean that the process starts again, i.e. could we call it in again because it's Cabinet and not Tudor Thomas if we felt that due process hadn't happened or consultation wasn't properly? And can I just remind the Cabinet member there is a serious letter being sent to this authority on the 15th of December, which was just before Christmas, reference to TAN 15. Thank you.
So, Councillor, you're proposing the never-ending cycle of decision and calling. Once this is referred back to Cabinet, Cabinet would have to consider it within 10 working days, so it would have to appear at Cabinet on the 18th of January. Cabinet's decision is entirely for Cabinet to determine what there will be on the basis of the information that they get in here and anything else that they seek. Once that decision has been made, you have, so again, to explain how this works, the decision is published. There are then 5 working days from that point within which 3 members of the council can come forward and say, not really happy with that, I'd like to call it in back into a scrutiny committee. That process has to sit within the Constitution. The Constitution requires me to determine whether it is a legitimate call-in or not, and it requires the Chief Executive as the proper officer to then agenda the meeting. If there was a significant new piece of information that came in the days subsequent to a Cabinet meeting, then it is possible. But if it is simply to go through the process that we've gone through today, then I can't see how that would be a legitimate purpose. It's the balance of trying to make sure that we don't end up completely stymieing decision-making powers effectively.
Okay, I do get that, and I do get that there'll be a lot more information to come, the reviews, which will have to go to select committee, all them little things before the Cabinet then makes another decision, and that will have to be scrutinised by every member, 46 of us, not just the Scrutiny Committee, correct? But I do get that, and as I say, we've never failed with the call-in, so I'm sure if we have to call it in again, we'll make sure it's right on the basis of legal. Thank you.
So, if this meeting decided to refer it to Cabinet, and I've heard the suggestions around the review processing finishing first, for example. So I imagine, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, I'm going to assume that that might form part of the feedback that this committee provides. Cabinet then, when they come together, they have to come together on the 18th because they have to consider the decision within 10 working days. But it could be that Cabinet then decide to defer that decision until the review completes. If that was the decision that was made, and clearly I'm here to really provide technical advice, so I cannot in any way set Cabinet up for a decision here. But then you would have a process that you could run appropriately, I would hope, and it just comes down to diary management at that point.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just leading on from what the monitoring officer mentioned, if this committee was to pass the decision onto the council has 2 options, I think you said. One was to say nothing or return it to the Cabinet. So ultimately, whichever option we take, it would be the Cabinet that would eventually make the decision. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, that's right. Because constitutionally, this is a decision that sits with the executive. So it is not for a scrutiny committee or a council to override that decision. They refer it back to the decision maker with whatever input they wish to make. The change would be, of course, council sits on the 19th of January, so it wouldn't be heard at Cabinet until the 1st of February in that case, as opposed to the 18th.
Chair, my hand is up.
Councillor Keir?
No, Tony Eason, Councillor Eason, my hand is up.
Sorry, Councillor Eason.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the basis that Councillor Thomas has just said that he'd be prepared to take this back to Cabinet, would it be? Am I able to move a motion that this paper, the individual Cabinet member decision, be revoked and Cabinet start again?
Councillor Eason, forgive me. Can you just repeat that question again?
Could I move a motion to the committee that the individual Cabinet member decision made on the 30th of November be revoked and go back to Cabinet?
No, simply the choice of the committee is those 3 options that are laid out.
So we've got to go back. One of the options is we've got to go back to the Cabinet member or no action or council in.
Those are your 3 choices, yes, Councillor.
Well, I'd like to move we move this back to the Cabinet member to take his decision as he sees fit. Can I move that motion? It's getting a bit late now.
Councillor Powell?
Yes, I understood that we were to choose between the 3 options. So when are we going to be allowed to decide on those three options. Do you want to propose them?
I'm going to briefly sum up, and then we're going to do.
Yeah, because I propose that we go back to full council. Thank you.
We haven't quite got to that, but we're almost there, Councillor Powell.
Yeah, all right.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I was just most perplexed when Councillor Thomas said that actually it wouldn't be any help to, it would be difficult when it went back to either council or to cabinet member decision because they don't have the evidence for the review, which is kind of part of the point of why we've brought this to this meeting. So but what you're saying, Matt, if I've just understood you, sorry, there were lots of dates. If the committee agree to refer this back to full council, because surely the point of this is to do more work on this proposal so that we have those proper consultation responses. And if part of the committee's recommendation is that, then even if it comes to council for debate on the 19th of January, there is still opportunity for the decision at council to back to, because then council has to refer it back to the cabinet member, cabinet potentially, for them to refer it back only with additional work, for example, to be content with that. So that seems to be the most robust option. Am I right in that, Matt? Can you just clarify those dates?
If this committee refers it back to the decision maker, then it will do so with a summary of all the points that have been made today, and if it goes to cabinet, it will be on the 18th of January, and it will be with the chair of this committee in attendance. If this committee refers it to council, it will go to council on the 19th of January. The debate will effectively take place within council in amongst the rest of the agenda that is already set on the forward work plan for council. The result of that debate will lead to a vote on whether or not to take no action or to refer it to the decision maker. Clearly, if it votes to take no action in council, then no action will be taken and the decision will be as it was made back in November. If the council decides to refer it back to the decision maker, it will go back to cabinet, if I use that as an example, because I know when the date is, on the 1st of February, with points from the meeting that were raised in council.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, I'm going to very briefly sum up because we've had lots of statements today, and a lot of them have been on a similar theme. So I'm going to briefly sum up where we are, and then we're going to go to the committee. Okay, so we've heard from the public that there's a lack of provision in the county for people with complex needs, which includes the day services and respite. The decision prioritises one group of people over another. Okay, there's been concern about the consultation process, the quality of the impact assessment and the decision-making process, and lack of scrutiny. Day centres are about much more than a building or a facility, they are a community. We want more scrutiny, more engagement with service users, and greater clarity on what future provision is going to be made. So I'm going to ask the committee, what is your preferred option? So you have options 1, 2, and 3. Are we all clear on what those options are? So, okay. Okay. If I could ask Councillor Rachel Buckler what her preferred option would be, if you could give me 1, 2, or 3 for simplicity, is that okay?
I am voting in favour of going back to full council, option number 3.
Thank you, Councillor Buckler. Councillor Powell.
I'm would vote for the option 3 for it to go back to full council.
Councillor Lucas for Councillor Edwards.
Option 3, full council.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Option 3, full council, please.
Councillor Crook.
Option 3, full council.
Councillor Eason for Councillor Stevens.
What was Councillor Crook's decision? I didn't hear it.
Option 3. Option 3, full council.
Option 2 for me.
Thank you. If that is the end, we'll come back to recommendations afterwards. Thank you, Councillor Eason. Councillor Strong?
Option 2.
Councillor Jones?
Option 3, please.
So is that everybody? I would also go for option 2. Option 3, to take this matter to full council, is carried. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, the reasons, unless anybody, are that committee members have said that the day centres are more about the building and the facility, and that they are a community, and that we want more scrutiny, more engagement with service users, and greater clarity on what future provision is going to be made. Is everybody clear? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you.